A lot of parents have this question that is India a big cross mark if my child is in an international school?
For today's kids moving forward, EQ is more important or as important as IQ.
I had the self-realization that I'm competing with the top learners from 193 different countries.
And a 4-year undergrad degree in the US can cost you anywhere roughly from about 1 to 2 crores a year. So I think it is extremely important to have this discussion today, and I'm going to start off with a very important piece of information that I'd like to share with you guys, which is the cost of education in India, which is rising at an annual rate of 10 to 12%, and studying abroad is even more expensive. And a 4-year undergrad degree in the US can cost you anywhere roughly from about 1 to 2 crores a year. So if you are that parent who is slightly confused, then this panel is going to be really, really interesting for you. I'm going to jump on to the first question on this panel, which is for building a future-ready learner, the role of education, career counseling, and financial planning. First question for you, Grishma. You meet so many students asking you for advice. How has the definition of being future-ready sort of changed in this fast-changing world? Like, what is future-ready?
I think the definition of being future-ready has definitely evolved. I think conventionally we used to think of it as just building on a single technical skill, right? I'll be an engineer, I'll be a doctor. It's something that, it's a hard skill. You're tested, you're taught, you're certified for it. Now that definition, I think, has broadened. Not only is it the hard skills, we also need to have soft skills, interpersonal skills, so we need to be able to communicate. We need to be able to do conflict management, leadership. There are a lot of those skills that we need to now also have as part of our tool belt. And beyond just the hard, soft, and interpersonal skills, we need to be multidisciplinary. So you can't no longer be, all right, I am good at graphic design. Along with graphic design, go across domains and be good at, or at least explore business skills or computer skills. Or if you're someone who likes music, also look at maybe exploring math. So I think from both point of view, so one is the definition has evolved, but I think along with it, we also need to evolve. We can no longer go with it with our biases or our preconceived notions that we have on how you need to be future ready. So we also have to help ourselves and our students adapt to this change and navigate through it and learn how we can help them through the process as well. So yeah, the definition has definitely changed, but I think along with it, we also need to change to help them navigate the process.
Kunal, that brings me to an obvious question for you, which is 6,500 learners at JBCN. You feel so responsible for educating a generation with so much of automation that is going to come into play. What do you think will be the foundational skills that make a school relevant for a child today?
Just taking off from what Grishma said, I think it's not only skills, I think it's a combination of skills and values that is required for young kids today, for learners today. Adaptability, for example, just to be able to pivot. Everyone in this room had to pivot their business in some way or the other when COVID came, right? If you were not adaptable, if you could not transfer that skill set, then a lot of the businesses or a lot of the organizations didn't survive. So I think adaptability is something that's really important as a skill. Your obvious ones like leadership, communication, etc. I also feel that for today's kids moving forward, I think EQ is more important or as important as IQ. I think a lot of what we're going to see in the future is about people management, because you will have tools, AI or any other tools that come up in the future that can do a lot of the work that is being done now, but you need the right EQ and the right mindset for people management. And similarly, I think the values are important, just to have the right values in terms of respect, honesty, integrity. I think these are time-tested. Doesn't matter what's going to happen in the future. I think that'll always keep an individual grounded and give them the mental strength we keep talking about. And the last thing I want to say is, at least at JBCN, I think we've changed the narrative. I don't think it's about building the right skills or values to be future ready, but the narrative that we are going with is actually build them so you can go out there and actually change the world, rather than try to fit into what the world will be, to actually go out there and say, hey, I'm going to make a difference as I move forward.
I absolutely love that, because when you're not aware of the unknown, you rather just be so resilient and evolving that it helps. I'm going to come to you. Do you agree with what both of them have said? And of course, what has your roadmap been in being in a school that you dreamed of?
I think I do agree with a lot that was said in terms of, obviously, one that struck out to me was the EQ part, because I do believe that we as an next generation have to ensure that our emotional quotient is as up to date as compared to our IQ. For me, there was no like set roadmap per se. I think Ms. Grishma was someone who sort of handheld me a lot throughout the process. My parents as well, they're here over here, they're always my biggest cheerleaders. And they as well, I think the support that you have, the support system you build around you, I think if that's strong, then you potentially can achieve a top university like Cornell. And I think for me, the most integral part was I had the self-realization that I'm competing with the top learners from 193 different countries, because everybody applies to an Ivy League. And once you get that, then you kind of understand where you're put, because you're competing for one spot. There's like, I think Cornell has a 7% acceptance rate, so only 7 out of 100 people get in. So it just puts into perspective how difficult and how strenuous the process is. And for me, it was always just work, work, work. I think right from 7th or 8th grade, I started building my profile up, with academics always at the cornerstone of it all. And I'm off to Cornell now in just 3-4 months. Yeah, that's been my journey.
Wow. I'm just trying to think what I was like at 18. And I'm like, I did everything but work, work, work.
Having said, I believe that the current education system has been created in a manner to be a general basis for all learners and does help students, if taken the right advantage of, to create skills which are necessary for moving ahead in life. But therefore, students should learn skills as well as academics if they want to be able to survive uncertainty that seems foreseeable in the future. Moving on to the second part of the question, what should students do when in college? I think in colleges, students should focus more on other activities rather than just academics. And it's essential to develop skills like networking or people skills, along with harnessing the willingness to actually learn something new every day, and not just academically, but again, skill-wise, and thereby developing a mindset wherein one is prepared to adapt to the challenges and changes of the ever-changing world we live in.
Kushal, I want to ask you, how does one go about, because you talk so much about financial planning on your platform, and that's really your strength. How does a parent start for, education abroad? How does a parent start right from, does it start when the child is born? Because I see a lot of parents creating spreadsheets with, with like education cost and then, other extracurricular costs and all of that. So how does one go about financial planning through the education part of it?
That's a good question. I think one-line answer for that would be the earlier, the better it is. Because as you rightly said, the education inflation has been rising. It's on the verge of 10 to 12%. And I also did like a fun video in our building itself asking parents how much they are spending on kids' education. And I was like blown away by the amount of fees and the amount of money that is being spent as compared to like 10 years back, 20 years back, etc. So I think the earlier you start, the better it is. I was interviewing Miss Radhika Gupta, who is the CEO of Edelweiss Mutual Fund, and she's also a shark on Shark Tank India. And she mentioned on my podcast that she has started systematic investment plan for her child when he was born immediately. So every month they have a fixed amount which they are like investing as an SIP every month in mutual funds. and this is being done in the, like, on behalf of her son, and that is going to be used for, let's say, son's education in the future, etc. So I think whenever you feel that, okay, like this is the right time, I should start investing in an SIP, or let's say if I should start just setting aside some funds and invest in, let's say, public provident fund, etc., I think you should do it as soon as possible. And education costs have been rising so much, so it's better to not delay this and do it whenever the child is born.
Kunal, if I have to come back to you, what would be the pillars of how schools can contribute to raise curious learners, global learners, and for someone to be in that evolution phase of the unknown, right, where they don't know what they're really prepping for? What is the role of schools and how is it evolving? How old is JBCN? Like, how many years, and how has that evolution been from the time that you started to how the curriculum has changed?
Yeah, so JBCN is now 20 years old. And I think the change and the evolution now is not, earlier it used to be every 10 years or 12 years. I think now every 2 or 3 years we are seeing change, we're seeing an evolution, we're seeing different skills that are important. And just to kind of think about the way we've gone about this entire process, I think for us it's about identifying what we want to achieve and then going into how we want to achieve it. So whether it's curiosity, whether it's an entrepreneurial mindset, whether it's resistance, or any of these skills that we spoke about, I think we first identify what we want to do. And then we think of different programs, resources, teachers, training, of how we are going to implement this.
And you know what I really want to emphasize on when you spoke of EQ, and if I go back to our opening acts, both of last year where we did the drum circle and this year where we did the dance, how do those integrate, or what is the value of those into a learner, in a learner's life? Like, how do you integrate that and why is it important?
I think it's just about allowing the mind to do different things rather than focus on one thing. I think when we all were in school, the focus was only one thing, and we had subject after subject, we have teacher after teacher coming into the classroom. I think now, all the learners are so much more mature that they need different stimulation. And the stimulation is just to keep them engaged, to keep their focus levels high. In fact, we've redesigned our schools, for example, where even in pre-primary, the learners go from class to class, from zone to zone, rather than teachers coming in, because research has shown that even that 1 minute break from going from one zone to the other, kids are chatting, they're pushing each other. It's almost like a refresh button. They go into the next zone or the next area where learning happens, and they're fresh again. So these are all part of the learning process where we kind of keep the engagement levels really high.
So interesting to hear that. Also, Grishma, coming to you and asking you this question on what is the roadmap really for a student who is in an international school today? We hear so many myths, and I'm sure a lot of parents have this question, that is India a big cross mark if my child is in an international school? True or false, and how would you answer that?
Absolutely false. You could be in an international school or any school in India, and both India and abroad are open to you. So definitely, if you're in the IB curriculum, Cambridge curriculum, you can apply to colleges in India for sure. The only thing I would say is you can apply anywhere, but does it make practical sense to? Right? If you're in an IB curriculum where you're engrossed in that curriculum, you have long hours, and then you're supposed to also then prepare, let's say, for the JEE. Does it make sense to do that? If you can manage it, yes, but it may not make practical sense, but that doesn't mean you can't apply to an Indian college if you're in the international. In fact, I think we have a lot of JBCN learners year on year who have applied abroad and to colleges in India and have chosen to go to India and are thriving in that environment because they're a holistic learner. Not only have they got the skills needed to do well academically, they're really taking advantage of the campus, the facilities. They're taking research opportunities. They're doing internships. They're setting up clubs. So, they're doing really well in interviews because they know how to speak. They know how to initiate. They know how to, be a part of a team. So I think, in fact, an international curriculum, and if you go to an Indian college, you're actually thriving in that environment because you have an X factor because of the learning that you've had. But absolutely, and just to add, just 3 examples from last year. We had one student who got into top colleges in Canada and in India, is at OP Jindal doing journalism. Another one got into NTU in Singapore, and Ashoka is at Ashoka doing economics. And a third one got into Bath, Warwick, King's in the UK, and is at NMIMS right now doing bio. So India is definitely a very, very viable option.
And Kunal, you've studied in an IB school. I want to ask you this question, which is, how different was it back then? How did it shape you? And how different is it today?
So I think, again, just coming back to education as a whole is very different from when I did the IB program 20 some years ago to what it is today. I think learners are doing a lot more. For example, the KSP program, learners are really involved in social work. It's a cause that they're taking up where they're realizing and building empathy and saying, hey, this is a way of life. Sports, physical activity has really changed because it's become now not only about sports, but there's a technical aspect to sports, a lot of analysis, etc. So much data is available. So when you're applying to colleges, the data you have, not only for the university you're applying to, but the program within the university you're applying to has completely changed. When back in the day, we just knew the names of universities and said, hey, these are good universities, let's apply there, without knowing or having enough data on the program. But if I can just add one more thing to my answer, what hasn't changed in the last 25 years is the grades and the expectations of high grades. So what it was 25 years ago of how well a learner needs to perform to get into a great university, that has not changed 25 years later as well. I think all the top universities, fortunately or unfortunately, still have a barrier saying, hey, this is the minimum grade that is required for you to even be considered to that university.
I'm going to ask you, Priyansh, is that a lot of pressure? And how do you buffer that pressure out in your head?
I think pressure is very subjective to the person. I believe that a certain extent of pressure is what I thrive under. If I don't have that knack in the back or constantly reminding me that, you have to kind of push yourself further, then I might not. So I do believe that a certain extent to it is great. I just believe that, as Sir said as well, the expectation hasn't changed. And he very rightly pointed out that sometimes if you apply to a particular university, they might not even look at your application. The first thing they see is your grade. If it's not good enough, no matter how many essays, no matter what your profile is, your extracurriculars, whatever you've done over these past 4 years in your high school, it's all scrapped. So that kind of pressure is there. But I do believe that now in the 21st century, we're sitting here in 2025, and words like academic anxiety or exam stress, it's normalized for the better. And I believe that if that really comes out in the limelight and if that taboo is kind of eradicated in our society, then there's the extent of pressure that I'm talking about under which I thrive. I think if that becomes normalized, then we really can achieve greater heights, get into the top universities, and build a real academic and professional life that we ourselves can be proud of.
I just feel like, are we sending an overdose of clone city kids to each of these colleges? I see Kunal smirk, so I'm going to ask him that question as well. But honestly, are we seeing an overdose of clone city kids?
I don't think so anymore. I think because the children today have so much exposure. Yes, even if they're in a school learning the same subjects and maybe going towards the same professions, there are things they're doing beyond the classroom. Most kids today are either playing a sport, learning an instrument, like doing internships, research. They're so well read, they're so well articulated, they're so confident, they're doing MUN. There's a lot of things that students are exposed to today. And I think based on that, parents are trying to find what their child's strengths, preferences, likes, dislikes are there, and then channeling them towards it. So I don't think there is that much of cloning. I think, in fact, we're getting more confident in individuals who are going into the education sphere and again, going back to what Kunal said, a lot of them want to be trailblazers, change makers. They no longer want a job and just go through up the corporate ladder and just work that. In fact, I think even at a very young age, they have great aspirations, a lot of things that they want to do. And I think this exposure that they're getting at a very young age is really giving them the opportunity to thrive. And I think when they're going on campuses, whether it be in India or abroad, there's so much that they're doing. And we see that with the startups, the jobs they're getting, a lot of them coming back and incorporating that into, I guess, a lot of them here in this room as well. So I think not at all. I think there's a lot of diversity that we're seeing.
Actually, the reason I was laughing is because I felt that when we went to university, we were all clones. I think there was a set template saying, this is what you have to do, these are your grades, you do this, 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 and you'll get into a good university. No more the case today. I mean, today you have to be doing something that you're passionate about, that you want to pursue. We've had learners across our schools starting their own business and actually doing fundraising for their business, and they have a thriving business while they want to go to university. There are kids in our school, and he knows them, that actually had built a prototype of an e-bike, I think, and got a patent on it, and they want to pursue that. So it's no more about saying, hey, this is the set template, and you do these 6 things and you'll get into college. In fact, if you do those 6 things, you probably won't get into the college that you want to get into. It has to be out of the box, different, 7%, 5% acceptance rates. So I know that in today's time, I don't think I would have gone to college. I don't think I would have got into college if I was applying with all these kids.
Okay, I'm going to conclude this panel with one common question for each one of you, which is, how are you learning every single day and trying to be at par in terms of knowledge, or at least making an attempt to be at par in terms of knowledge, experience, skill set with someone who's, I don't even want to know how many years younger, but like 28 years younger than us. But how are you keeping yourself ahead to compete with somebody who's much younger?
It's unbelievable. I mean, even today, if I ask anyone in this room, if you just closed your eyes, when he was speaking, I don't think anyone would have said he's a 17-year-old speaking on stage.
Yes,
right?
I agree. I
mean, hats off to you.
We should give him a huge round of applause for that.
So I think for me, multiple ways. I think I'm fortunate to be in an industry where I'm surrounded with people that are very well educated, smarter than me. They know what to do and how to do it, and I actually just go and observe and learn. But for me, my biggest learning comes when I actually go into the schools, and I go quite regularly, and I interact with the learners. And you'll be surprised, but my biggest learnings come when I interact with like 5 to 10-year-olds. The kind of questions they have, the curiosity they have. Sometimes I need to take a second to think of what I kind of need to tell them or how I need to answer their questions. I think it's unbelievable. So for me, learning happens regularly. I'm constantly in touch with them. I think learning happens with conversations with my own kids. They teach me a lot on what they want today, what do kids want today, what is important, what's not only in education and schools, but just in life. So I think if you keep interacting, and I get that opportunity because of what I do, for me, like, learning is every day.
Okay. Grishma, for you.
I agree with what Kunal says. I think we're very lucky we work with very young individuals. And for me, that's how I don't get complacent, right? Like, it's important to keep the conversation ongoing. Not only, I've been working with Priyansh since he was in 8th grade, but even my students who go to college, when they come back for spring break, summer holidays, even after they've graduated and they're working, I think it's just constantly keeping those conversations alive, keeping those relationships alive, meeting them for a coffee, knowing what's happening, and listening and talking to them. I think that's one of the best ways for me to be learning about what's happening in this space. When we all read papers and all of that, but these guys are experiencing it, living it, and constantly having conversations where you're asking questions and listening to them, for me, that's been the greatest learning, for sure.
I think for me, one of the reasons that like I usually stay ahead is I surround myself with people who I know for a fact are 10 times smarter, are 10 times more hardworking. Like that's the reason, one of the biggest reasons I chose Cornell is because I already know the kind of exposure I'm going to have over there and the kind of people I'm going to be surrounded with. So I think that's the biggest advantage for me. I think they push me to be better as well. And again, as I said in the first question as well, if you have the right support around you, I think sky's the limit.
Kushal, you.
I think there are three ways by which one can learn anything. One is through reading books, second is by listening to some videos, third is through interacting with people. I am a big fan of the third one. I reach out to like one new person, two new people every week from the building, network with them. That's how I reached out to Mansi also, I think 6-8 months back. And I really like when I meet young, passionate individuals who are very driven and I can learn something from them.
This has been an incredible chat, and I'm going to follow this principle of meeting one new person every week, and I urge you guys to all do it. But thank you so much, each one of you, for being here today, for being part of this conversation, for answering so many questions that I think have been top of mind, but we haven't found the answers to those. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For parenting tips, celebrity interviews, recipes, conversations with experts, DIYs, and lots more. Subscribe to Kidsstoppress now.